This podcast contains an English accent that most of our Irish listeners will find offensive. Also, there may be some colourful language that you're going to find less offensive. Now, over to Ryan and Leon. Enjoy the podcast.
People often ask why is poetry important? What's the point of poetry? What's the point? I think because, for me, anyway, what I love about poetry is a time when you are alone with yourself. And in these days, as you know, so many we're pulled in different directions. We've got to do this and do that and answer this, answer that. And there's always an email waiting of someone telling you to do something, and you're getting marks out of 10 for everything. And where poetry is a time when you can just be alone with your thoughts, and in my case with a pen and a paper, and see what comes. That was the exciting thing. It's for me, the poetry is always a journey, and I don't know what the end is going to be. And it's so different from writing essays and compositions and pieces of journalism where you've got to be careful at the beginning and set up a middle and an end. Poetry can begin anywhere, can begin at the end and work backwards as I do. And the excitement part is starting a poem with a few words and then not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing so many hours later or so many days later where the poem has taken me.
I think after the weekend we're just obsessed with Liverpool accents.
Oh God, yeah. Couldn't get enough of them.
How are you, chicken?
You alright?
You alright, sausage?
You alright, sausage?
Well, the value of poetry, yes, isolated, meditative states and, seeing where it goes, but also going on the lash.
Well, do you know what? We were fucking 3 inches away from opening up our own karaoke bar in Liverpool there on Sunday.
Liverpool is a city that apparently never stops singing karaoke.
No, never.
Oh my God.
From
Shout out
morning
to
till night.
Cooper's pub in Liverpool. Oh my God. Probably the most fun pub I've ever been in.
From the minute they open to the minute they close, karaoke 7 days a week.
Great pint of Guinness as well.
They live stream it.
They do live
You
stream
can
it, yeah,
watch
they
it.
do live stream it.
You can
As soon as we
pause,
walked into that pub, I was like, okay.
pause the
we're fucked here.
podcast now, go and live stream Cooper's for a
Cooper's.
second, see what's happening, come back in, you'll know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So
Are
much
you
fun.
recovered now from that trip?
Spent the last 2 days in the garden.
Purging.
Sweating, doing a bit of walk.
Yeah,
and
same.
purging. Yeah, I feel a bit better now, so yeah.
Great though.
Oh, it was fabulous. It was amazing. The gig was fantastic.
Gig was fantastic, and thank you everybody from Andy Porter for coming up on the train, Colin Anderson, to all the lovely people we met, from Neve to
Hayley.
Nicola, Hayley, Rachel, Gary the artist, everybody that we met on that night.
So much fun.
Just thank you so much for being so sound and listening like 10:15 at night, listen to poetry,
And then bringing us on the lash.
and then bring us on the lash.
finish the night with a kebab. That's poetry, baby.
to an Irish pub called Shenanigans.
Oh yeah.
What?
A pint of shenanigans, please. Unreal.
What a city.
What a city.
What a city. I absolutely loved it. Today we've got a special interview podcast with Tristram Fane Saunders, who's an English poet who The Winding Stair picked as our monthly read-along. So we're going to have a little conversation with him in a sec about all things related to him, poetry, his life as a journalist, his new residency at Cambridge University as well. So it's going to be a really wonderful conversation. Before that, when we were in Liverpool, we were the recipients of plenty of wonderful pieces of poetry and art. We picked up some art when we were there as well.
Got a nice painting with a tit on it.
You did.
And some gold flecks.
Thanks for that, Neve.
There you go. Yeah, it was lovely.
But one of the real pleasures was to meet Colin Anderson.
Oh yeah.
In person. Colin is got not living too far away from Liverpool, wanted to come along. He'd been supporting the podcast since for the best part of a year probably now, and he performed some poems, and one of them that really hit the room home was called Two Boys. So we've gotten Colin to send us a little voice note about what the poem is and share the poem.
So wrap your ears around this.
Enjoy this. This is Colin Anderson.
I was inspired to write Two Boys one day after listening to a radio station that played three pieces of classical music in a row that just seemed to be glorifying war, and it pissed me off. It was annoying. The news is horrific, and it's horrific because of current wars, and yet there seemed to be this good old boys. Wasn't that amazing? And it reminded me of this story my granddad told me, so I wrote Two Boys. Two boys. Thousands volunteering in a spirit of euphoria and duty. Many more receiving that fateful letter. Society cheering them off to war. To go and kill for king and country. And it seems, Grandad, that your country needed you. Flags waved and ushered you off to foreign lands. The propaganda machine on full steam ahead to go and kill and be glorious. Vera Lynn serenading you over the channel. It was only at Nan's funeral you told us you entered a room at the same time as a German soldier. Both spurred on to kill for king, country, Führer, democracy. Both of your chances of glory awaited. Two boys with rifles face to face. Two boys with rifles nervously looking. Two boys with rifles knowing their duty. Two boys with rifles smile, nod, and back out of the room. Two boys with unfired rifles doing their bit for humanity.
That was Two Boys by Colin Anderson.
Very powerful and quite ironic, because the next day when we were in Liverpool, there was a parade for VE Day in Liverpool, where the veterans of, to celebrate the victory of Europe, isn't it? That's what it is. They had a parade. It's like, talking about glorifying a war.
We were chatting about Dunkirk and stuff. Remember we were saying about the civilians having to go over and rescue the soldiers from the beaches of France.
Yeah.
In their civilian vessels, and how people power kind of saved a military force from annihilation, essentially, because the Germans were at the door. So it's, I think, and we actually, I remember, because this is sparking a chat. We had this chat as well, I remember, and it was like how the glorification of war, when young men go off thinking they're fighting for, king and country and going off with the great, pride of their nation, and then once you get there, and it's horror after horror after horror, and then you send them back. There's when we were watching that parade, and there was old soldiers there, and I was wondering which ones of them would have been in war, because obviously there's, Britain wasn't always a war at the time, and I'm wondering, after suffering through all that horror for a parade, how would you feel watching that? Would it make you go, it was worth it for this? For drums and pipes and people walking.
And drums.
Is that really worth all the horror that you saw, or the horror that you inflicted? It was just something that kind of made me think.
Playing it in your mind.
Yeah, I was like wondering, because we were looking up and we could see the officials standing on the balcony, and
the mayor of Liverpool was up there, and
soldiers marching, and I'm like, but there was soldiers kind of just sitting by, having a pint and just kind of watching the parade, or they're standing for the parade. But like, I wonder what they would feel watching that, and would it feel anticlimactic, and would you feel kind of like, well, this is it, and I don't feel the way I should. But then who would feel like that? Yeah, that was great, I've done my bit, and now look at this.
It's obviously, it's a great point, because celebrating on behalf of soldiers at war is great crack. But none of them were in the war of which they were celebrating, so obviously it's easy to wave your flag around and go like, oh yeah, cheers to victory. It's like, hang on, I'm not sure how it would feel if you were in there anyway. Would you even go?
There's a lot of stories of like soldiers throwing their medals away because they're like, what's a piece of tin for all the people I lost and what I saw.
That
just made me think about it. But we went on another little walking tour.
We went to see Liverpool. Yeah, what a great city, a beautiful city. And we were walking from where we were staying, just on the outskirts of Liverpool on Fox Street, and walking down, and we came up into, I think it was actually a walking tour between two people. He looked like a tour guide with one customer.
Yeah.
We kind of hovered, didn't we? And we hit a monument that was commemorating the lives lost of something that you hadn't heard of called the Hillsborough disaster. And it's a tough story. Tough story, Hillsborough. If you don't know, Hillsborough is a football stadium in Sheffield that hosted the 1989 FA Cup semi-final between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. And on that day, contrary to all of the media speculation at the time of people drinking and jumping terraces and pushing people out the way, bad crowd control and bad policing led to the death of 89 people through being crushed and the stadium collapsing. And actually, the people of Liverpool and the families of the people that were killed, essentially, have been campaigning against the police, like the Sun newspaper, media, to get justice. A little bit like what we were talking about a couple of months ago about the Stardust nightclub, of the blame game of and pushing that back onto the people that were there. And obviously, at the time in 1989, it was a time where probably people would have been drinking at football matches, and there weren't seated stadiums, so it was easy to put that back onto the people. And the people of Liverpool were victims of that kind of smear campaign. We passed this monument, and it was a beautiful stone thing, and at the bottom of it was a poem. And the poem is written by a guy called David Charters. David Charters was a journalist who passed in the year 2020. He was also a poet. He worked for the Liverpool Echo for the majority of his life, and he wrote this poem. And Leon, I'm going to get you to read this one out. It doesn't have a title, but this is from the memorial in Liverpool city centre for the lives of the lost Hillsborough disaster victims.
And so, as one, the hushed crowd turned the pages of the book that held the names of the dead. The sound that rose from them was like the great flapping of birds' wings into the sky. It carried the memories of the faithful who reach into the dark. The teachers whose wisdom was lost. The parents who will never cradle children. The makers whose hands were stilled. The jokers whose laughter vanished. The singers whose songs are silence. The lovers whose love lasts forever.
That was the Hillsborough poem from the memorial in the city centre of Liverpool by the poet David Charters. Leon, great job.
Thank you. Powerful poem.
Yeah, powerful poem. And a story that, thankfully, the justice was achieved.
Yeah.
From the victims' families, so amazing, and a big part of Liverpool city's culture. So yeah, it was I just loved seeing that poem and that memorial. We're going to introduce Tristram Fane Saunders to the podcast. So Tristram has his new collection. Before we go any further, that book is part of our read along this month, but we wanted to get him on, have a chat with him about life, poetry, again his Cambridge residency. So and we kind of go all around the houses. So enjoy it. This is me and Leon talking to Tristram Fane Saunders.
Also as well, if you like the interview, if you like Tristram's work, make sure you check out our Patreon. It's £3 a month. We'll be doing a deep dive in the collection itself before we go any further. So as I said, interview, enjoy that, wrap your ears around that. But if you want to go any further, jump into our Patreon, £3 a month.
£3. Buzzing.
Is this a good kind of volume level?
This is it. We're in the money.
We got there eventually.
Yeah, okay, we got there. Great.
We're on.
Good stuff.
Thanks for your patience, Tristram. I do appreciate that.
We all got it out of the way at the start. It's the main thing.
We're in
cool.
we're in a library here, Tristram, and they have a free podcast facility. And Leon was trying to work out if his phone was malfunctioning because of the sun we've got in Ireland for the first time in months. And he was playing his music from Spotify, and I've just realised Leon's Spotify is exactly the same as the first 3 Guitar Hero games. And he's sitting in front of me with an Iron Maiden tank top here. So I'm just quite
Amazing.
embarrassed to have this happening, really.
I'm wearing my poetry vest.
I've not seen you wear that.
What is a poetry vest?
It's an Iron Maiden shirtless t-shirt from Primark.
Primark.
Terrific.
Look, you have to be.
I don't know if they let you into a library without one of those these days.
Exactly. Well,
I think it's like the necessary dress code.
Yeah, that's true. Tristram, we're delighted to chat to you. We have the guys at the Winding Stair Bookshop pick a book for us to have a read of every month, and we got in touch with you, and you've been to that shop. So before we kind of get into the poetry, I'd love to find a bit more about what were you doing there, and what your trip to Dublin was like when you were here.
Oh man, I was staying in. Do you know Rush, just sort of down the coast from Dublin?
No, Rush very well, Leon. You lived not too far from Rush.
My mum lives in Lusk, which is very, very close. Yeah.
North side.
Oh, brilliant! Well, I was on holiday with my partner for like a long weekend. We were staying in Rush just because we happened to find a cheap Airbnb that looked really nice. We went paddling in the sea, and we took a day trip to Dublin, largely for checking out bookshops and that kind of thing. We ended up browsing for hours in the Winding Stair and actually going for dinner at the little restaurant upstairs from there.
How good,
I love a combination bookshop restaurant is a great thing. There should be more bookshops where you can spend 8 hours there without fainting from hunger. There's an amazing one in I was in Hastings on Monday for the bank holiday, where they've got this brilliant second-hand bookshop that's like a proper Aladdin's cave of all of these mysterious dusty tomes. But then from about 5 o'clock every day it turns into a Thai restaurant. They pull out all of these tables that they shove in between the shelves. It is completely magical. But, yeah, actually, I was there. They have this. You might enjoy this, actually. The reason I was in Hastings, I have a friend, the poet Camille Ralphs, invited me along to this kind of pagan ritual that takes place in the town every year, where they sacrifice a sort of green man figure to usher in the coming of the summer. It's called Jack in the Green. The whole thing feels like a deleted scene from The Wicker Man. It's really quite something.
Yeah, I've been to a place like that. Have you ever been down like South Coast, like Yeovil or Irish St Mary, or those like small towns that's like southwest?
I know of them. I've not been.
I went to a wedding once in Irish St Mary, and we were in a pub, and it was one of like 4 like places you could spend money in the whole village, this pub. And in the pub you had all these photographs of, like you said, like a pagan ritual with like just lads with like burning haystacks on their back running through the streets. It's like every year that there's a ritual. There's, like you say, Wicker Man stuff.
Burning haystacks.
Yeah. A bit like the Hill of Tara in Meath. Like, I'm sure they have things like that there, don't they?
In fairness, I was only telling Ryan Tristram there on the weekend about there's a thing down in Kerry in the south of Ireland in Killorglin, and it's called Puck Fair, where basically they believed there's a mountain goat. There was like an invasion, and the mountain goat in the town, whatever it is, came and told the locals. They're like, that's really strange. Why is the mountain goat come from the waste and come inside, obviously from the wilderness? There's obviously something going on, and it alerted the townsfolk to believe that there's an invasion, so they're able to prepare. So every year since, they have this pagan festival where they put a crown on a goat and they put it in a cage and they hoist it up in the air, and then everybody just gets pissed.
Oh my god, this sounds brilliant for everyone except the goat.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like a good gig for the goat, does it?
I think Peter giving out about it, so I think they have a fake goat now. It's not a real goat.
Oh, okay, right.
Right.
The real goat's in the pub now.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
I love this. I might have to go for that next year.
Yeah, and you can go to the Father Ted Festival on the way as well. You know about the Father Ted Festival, Tristram?
No, I hadn't heard about it.
And your celebration of the television show Father Ted. That is it on one of the Aran Islands?
It's supposed to be on Craggy Island, which isn't
it's not fake island.
It's not a real island.
But people go there for a 3-day session dressed as various characters from the show, and they just get like there's a bloody fashion, like there's like a lovely girl. Was it called Lovely Girls? There's a Lovely Girls competition. It's actually mad. They love that TV show, don't they?
Oh, they do. Yeah. Oh, they do.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I like the idea of arriving. Imagine if you were on holiday there and you didn't realise it was happening. You step out of your car and suddenly you're surrounded by drunken priests. It'd be like getting caught in the middle of a papal conclave or something.
They're all getting pissed.
Speaking of having fun, Tristram, when we were reading your collection, I had a feeling that you had a lot of fun writing this. Tell us about whether or not that's true, because it definitely felt there was joviality and fun and revelry coming through the words. So tell us a little bit about like what it was like to write it. I know like it was a stretch. It's your work stretched across like quite a long period, isn't it? Like 10 years of poetry in this debut collection.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being so kind about the book. It is something that covers about 10 years of poems. I mean, I've written groups of poems that were more kind of narrative, character-based things that appeared in some pamphlets in the years in between. But the stuff in here is kind of the best standalone poems that I've written over that time. So, as I'm sure you know, when you're writing in dribs and drabs, occasionally, it doesn't really feel like you're writing a book. I would sort of sit down at my desk at midnight on a Sunday night and have no idea what I'm doing. And for me, a lot of the time, writing is kind of a process of discovery. I might get a couple of lines or an image, and then you kind of want to listen to the poem, and it will tell you what direction it wants to go in. But I didn't really think about it as writing a book. In the moment of writing, I'm just writing a poem. And then a couple of years ago, Michael Schmidt, who's the editor at Carcanet, got in touch with me and asked if I might have a book yet. And I told him, no. Because I don't feel ready. And then he got back in touch a year later saying, do you think maybe now? And I said, well, yeah, maybe. I've definitely got some poems.
Usually people fake that they've got a book, Tristram, and then they pitch it to editors. You had an editor saying, do you have a book? And you said no.
Yeah, basically, I'm quite critical about my own stuff, and I worry that much of it is not very good. And I don't write very much poetry. I'm trying to write more, but in the past, like in a good month, I might get one poem a month, and then out of those 12 poems a year, maybe 3 or 4 of them would be ones that I'd be happy with, you know. So my initial reaction to him was no, but I guess part of the result of having written these over such a long period of time is that you get lots of different styles in the book. But I think that would also be true if they were all written over the course of 6 months, because I don't really like to get pigeonholed or tie myself too neatly to any particular form or style or approach. I mean, some of the poems in the collection are in quite tight little forms, but they're not familiar or well-trodden forms. Usually there'll be something where I've got a particular rhyme scheme and stanza pattern that only exists for that one poem, that's never been used before and probably will never be used again, because it has to come naturally out of the direction that the poem's already heading in. I think of it like when I was a kid, I used to grow bonsai trees, and you'd sort of look and see if there's a new branch that wants to curve in a particular direction, and then you lean into it and help it to exaggerate that curve, and you look for the patterns that are already developing and then just sort of lean into those patterns. So each poem, I hope, feels kind of different to the others, but then it might just be I'm far too close to the book to really get a sense of it. I mean, it could be that you've read this and went, well, you know, all of these are about, I don't know, vegetables or whatever massive theme or bit of imagery I'm just totally oblivious to because I'm far too close to them. So I'd be really keen to know from you if there was anything in particular that struck you about it when you were reading through it.
You know what? I think what's kept with me in the last couple of weeks after I've read it, like obviously because it's a book, you only have the imagery from 1 or 2 poems that stay with you. I have images of like the poem Lullaby. That poem for me, like it's just been like, you know, when you break the fourth wall and you say you look tired in that poem. Maybe sorry, this is useless to the readers, listeners who hasn't read the book. Maybe I might even ask you, Tristram, if you've got the collection with you, to maybe read that poem out at some point on this interview. But definitely that moment of you reviewing the world as a place where we're not quite settled and we're not quite rested, but you're a friend. Like the poem is a friend to the reader. So it's almost like the beginning of a disaster movie where you're seeing different kinds of people in different situations who are like blinking or like lying and can't settle, and then vroom, like as the narrator, like you go, you look tired too, and it kind of breaks through, and that's been staying with me since I read that fucking poem. and there's and that's not the only poem that does that. I think the poems that have stuck with me, they feel like a review of the world currently with the helping hand of a friend, which is the poem. I don't know if that really makes sense to you, Leon, but that we both agreed that was the poem that stuck with us.
Yeah, Lullaby.
Yeah, Lullaby. Both we both mentioned that, didn't we, over the weekend? So it's those isolated images.
Oh yes, I just want to say I love what you said a moment ago of the idea of the poem as a friend to the reader. That is something that matters really importantly to me, I think. There's a lot of stuff in the book about loneliness and about people I care for, but who I feel distant from in one way or another, whether emotionally or geographically. And that thing direct address can do in a poem, where suddenly you're 2 or 3 stanzas in, and then suddenly you get the word you.
Yeah.
And I think that it always makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. There's this kind of frisson that comes with the ambiguity of it. You don't know if the you is some listener or addressee apart from yourself, and you're kind of eavesdropping in on this really intimate moment, or if the you is, as it frequently is in the book, you, the reader, the person on the other end of the sheet of paper, is something that the amazing Scottish poet who lived much of his life in Cornwall, W.S. Graham, does so much in his poems, where he'll say things like, on this side of the words it's late, you know, and he'll be writing to you from his little dark room in the middle of the night, and you could be reading it on like a blazing sunny day, and he is only the thickness of one sheet of paper away from you. And that kind of strange distance and intimacy is something that I really love playing with.
It's palpable, man.
Playing with the ambiguity of whether it is you, the reader, or if it is you, someone I know. But I hope that in the moment of reading, it makes you feel that intimate connection, because you feel you're putting yourself into the shoes of whoever is being spoken to in this poem. I've got it in front of me if you'd like me to
Would you
read it
mind? And it's a bit indulgent of us to ask you, but if you wouldn't mind, that'd be amazing.
now. Absolutely, I love taking requests. Okay,
Okay, yeah, same.
Lullaby. Lullaby. No one sleeps. Matt living with his parents again, and 2 days sober, almost. Jackie taking pictures of the moon that wakes above the thumbtacked desk she rests her cheek on when she inks her picture books of pyramids or shapes her careful lines of coke. It's almost dawn as Zoe starts another chapter of the niche erotica she ghosts for 7 cents a word, awake as us. You look awake. I look like something you might like to sleep through. Richard, with the man he used to lie beside, who's on a bed on wheels and never sleeps or wakes. It's not what any of us wanted. Hum it. It will do.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
That was class, man.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Can I just ask?
Thanks so much.
It's phenomenal reading, but there's a few poems that I noticed. There's a few kind of damaged people or people that are just kind of going through things. Like there's a poem here that stuck out. I just made a note of How the Raven Ate the Moon. I hope you don't mind me reading just the first 3 lines for those who haven't got it in front of them. But
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
She couldn't tell me past the lump in her throat, but something was broken or breaking. It had been 4 weeks exactly since she'd stopped taking whatever it was that she'd been taking. Like, what an opener.
Yeah, I know. What an opener.
It's just, it seems like a very nocturnal kind of, there's just a lot of people kind of going through a lot of things at the first kind of part of the book. That's what I kind of got from reading the collection,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why there's like a little kind of preface poem called Home, about trying to make a connection with people. But after that, the first section of the book, I guess, is these kind of nocturnes. I was thinking about them as like little pieces of music, night music. I mean, the opening 2 are about a kind of drawing on surrealist art, but also about these nocturnal encounters with people. Like the first one is called The Somnambulist, the sleepwalker. It's a drawing on that old movie, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, but it's about going to a late night costume party where someone is dressed as the somnambulist from that film. And the next one is called The Oneiroscopist, which is an obscure word that I had to look up, but it's the title of this amazing painting by Edith Remington, the British surrealist painter, where it's of this figure that looks a bit like the Grim Reaper, but with a bird's skull and this diving helmet, and it's going to dive down into the ocean of the subconscious. And an oneiroscopist is someone who can supposedly like dive into dreams and interpret your dreams for you. So I wanted, when I was writing the book, I had this. The reason it's in 3 sections, but they're not titled. And in my mind, the first section it's kind of, I don't know, this is going to sound horribly pretentious. Am I allowed? It's a poetry podcast. Am I allowed to be a little bit pretentious?
We're not that highfalutin, but yeah, be a bit pretentious. It's fine. There's no Ocean's 11 here, so yeah, don't worry.
Yeah, so the first section is kind of like hell, and the second section is kind of limbo, and the third section is kind of heaven. Because the first section is all of the really depressing late night poems, and then the second section is all of the really weird, surreal stuff, where it's also in conversation with other writers and singers a lot. And then the third section is kind of the more kind of content poems about love and friendship and places that I know and I'm fond of. And so a lot of it is sort of set outdoors in the sunshine in Crystal Palace Park, which until recently I lived right on the edge of, which is my favourite park in London. It's just filled with those mad Victorian paraphernalia, these huge stone dinosaurs and sphinxes, and there's a hedge maze. And I found it just like a really wonderful place to be able to go jogging around and wander around. And so I kind of wanted to start in the dark and then finish the book in the light.
It sounds like Dante's Inferno and then the Purgatory, Paradiso. There's a kind of nod to that in the book because Dante is in here. In fact, there was one day when I was jogging in Crystal Palace Park and I saw it's filled with these statues, but there was a kind of headless statue that always struck me. And I later learnt from a friend that is a statue of the poet Dante. Oh.
But some guy in the 80s, I assume it was a guy, nicked the head off the statue and they've never found it, so it's just been headless ever since.
So somebody has Dante's head in their apartment.
And like a minute's walk from there is this amazing hedge maze. And so I wrote a poem that was kind of tying together Dante and this headless statue and the hedge maze. And it was in the middle of lockdown and thinking about being trapped in all these spirals and concentric circles. So I do play with that a little bit in the collection. But I'd never want... I would feel annoyed or disappointed with myself if people felt, well, this is a book that's entirely about Dante or about art illusions or anything. I always feel illusion in poetry, when it's really working, is like a kind of Easter egg or optional extra. That it has to be the poem, something that really viscerally hits people on the first encounter and they enjoy it, even just for the music of it, if nothing else. But then each time they can go back and discover new things in it. And I think having that kind of intertextuality in the background is something that just gives you more to find on a second or third hearing. But that only works if you like it enough to want to have the second or third hearing. So
you're going to want to go
I
back.
never want that stuff to overwhelm the poem.
Would music be a big influence in your writing?
Yeah, this is a funny thing, but I kind of got into writing poetry through music. When I was a teenager, like many teenagers, I was in a really terrible band. We called ourselves like a jazz punk group, mostly because we wanted to play jazz but didn't have the technical chops, so we resigned ourselves to playing punk. And I used to play keyboards very badly and sing in the loosest possible sense of the word sing, and write lyrics for it. And writing those lyrics kind of got me into the performance poetry scene when I was a teenager. I used to tour a bit and do festivals and that kind of thing. So music was, I guess, the thing that mattered to me most when I was starting writing poetry. But when I started reading it or just hearing it as a kid, the sound of poetry has always been a really crucial thing to me. I mean, when people ask me who my favourite poets are, Dr. Seuss is usually in the list because, when I was a toddler, I'd never experienced anything that sounded like that. And it just really hits you. And there's something really joyful about being able to create effects through the music of the language that are distinct from the meaning of the language. To write something that should feel melancholy but instead feels hilarious, or vice versa, just through the particular tone and cadence of the words. So music in that sense matters to me really closely. Actually, there's I don't know if I'm allowed to say this yet.
Okay,
I will say it. There's a secret for the podcast, and if I don't name the person, I think it's okay. In the middle of the book, there's a bit where it's supposedly interrupted by a different book for this series of what present themselves as being medieval folk songs.
Yeah.
And there's a brilliant and quite well-known composer who's been in touch about setting those 5 folk songs to music.
Wow.
Which I'm really
That's
excited
cool.
to see how it will turn out. Because when I was writing them, I wanted them to sound like things that could be sung. But it never occurred to me to imagine like an actual melody for them.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Actually, that little bit of the book, please stop me if I'm rambling, but it's the only thing that was published sort of in book form beforehand. I published those 5 poems under a pseudonym in this tiny little pamphlet a couple of years back. really leaning into the sort of metafictional conceit of it. They're introduced by this character who isn't me, claiming that they've found these papers of these modern English translations of medieval folk songs among the belongings of this elderly university professor who died under mysterious circumstances.
And he doesn't exist, right? That's you just taking the piss, basically. You're having fun.
Completely. Yeah.
I was reading that going, so this isn't a piss take, this.
Lost files.
Oh, yeah. So this is a actually, I'll give you just rather than paraphrasing all of this, I'll give you a little snippet from the editor of these poems, who supposedly has inserted this bit into the middle of my book without my knowledge, says, it would be regrettable if recent press interest in the nature of his death were to overshadow his life and work. Indeed, I have come to suspect that some of the wilder misreporting is responsible for the abruptness with which every press I approached rejected his verse. And they go on to say, I had no choice but covertly to insert these pages, having won the confidence of an insomniac printer who harboured some sympathy for his more esoteric interests, into the manuscripts of 9 minor poets published by a Manchester-based press.
Nonsense.
So you get this bizarre little interlude. I was really in two minds about including this stuff in the book, but people seem to quite enjoy it.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it when I was reading it.
Thank you. I mean, the real game with it, these were, in some sense, the most difficult poems I've ever written, because each of them only uses one vowel. But a thing that delights me is I've met several people who've read it and didn't notice that each of those poems only has one vowel in it, which I feel is like completely what I was aiming for. I wanted it to feel
I didn't notice that. I didn't notice that.
Oh, that's amazing! I'm so happy whenever that happens.
No clue.
Because I've seen other people doing like one vowel poems where you look at it and you got
Harry Baker did that.
It's like, well, it's impressive. Someone did that, but it's not enjoyable as a poem. I wanted these to feel like believable poems, despite the fact that they only have one vowel in.
Yeah, hear you. Yeah, if you know the poet Harry Baker.
Oh yeah,
Harry Baker. So like he's quite good at that, isn't like
Ingrid.
single? Yeah, Ingrid's a poem that's single vowel, but I know what you mean. It can seem like
univocalic. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, univocalic. But it's like it can seem like a little bit like who's got the biggest one. Do you know what I mean? Okay, grand. We know you can do it, but I didn't notice that at all.
Wow. Yeah.
And going back to what you're saying just there about like. Poetry's meant to not just be entertaining, but really like lovely to listen to. I hadn't read any Dr. Seuss since I was a kid, but then I only recently bought the book "Oh, the Places We Will Go," or the places. It's called "Oh, the Places You'll Go," and you don't really need self-help books, really. If you just need to read Dr. Seuss. Back to front, I read that on. Get this, I actually pulled it out right. It's about the size. It's massive. This book, obviously, it's a children's book, and I pulled it out on a bus at like 10 p.m. after the pub because I had it in my bag. I was sitting next to some lass, and she's probably looking at me, going like, "What is he doing?" Just catching up, opening this big purple Dr. Seuss book at 10 p.m. on the pub. But obviously, I did it for that sport as well. Do you know what I mean? I knew what I was up to. But like you said, it's not meant to be. It's meant to be performative, but in a way that's entertaining and isn't so much so about what you know or how widely extensive your vocabulary is or how skillful you are with a pen. It's about like being entertaining first, and then like you said as well, hiding the Easter eggs within the poems when people come back. That's more, I think that's an interesting because with your line of work, because like in your real world, you're a journalist. No, Tristram, that's how you earn your shekels anyway.
Yeah. I probably refer to myself as a recovering journalist now.
Yeah,
I've been working as a journalist for like the last 10 years, mostly for newspapers. I was an editor at the Daily Telegraph for a long time on the culture desk, writing largely about stand-up comedy, music, and books.
Oh, cool.
And freelancing all over the place as well in between. But I'm currently on this kind of mad escape from that. I've got a sort of 2-year writer-in-residence post at Cambridge University. So I've gone from being a journalist who, as his guilty secret, wrote poems in his spare time, to being a poet who, as his guilty secret, does journalism in his spare time.
Congratulations, mate. That's great.
Incredible.
Thank you.
That's really good.
It's a really strange thing, but it's amazing.
I wonder how that kind of influence mixes into your poetry, because with poems, maybe you don't agree with this, but you start at the end a little bit. So you're daydreaming and then to a point where you have to add language to a daydream, but it's never really I don't know, like my writing process is you can't,
in the middle at least.
You can't, at least in the middle, you can't seek out inspiration really. You can seek out, like we talked about last week, like you can go for a walk and hope, but it's really daydreams and lightning that you need to then add language to, but it's never a start, middle and end. You're always starting either in the meat of it, like we said last week, or at the end.
Did you just say daydreams and lightning?
Yeah,
that's the name of your new poetry collection there, Ryan Duggins. What a line. Daydream and lightning, that's amazing.
Well, we've confirmed what my next collection's going to be. It's Get the Ride and Shut Up. That's my next collection. It'll be poetry. Get the Ride and Shut Up. But going back to what you were saying earlier, what we were talking about, Tristram, is the kind of influence that your journalism has on your poetry. Like how, with your writing previously, you must have quite a succinct story that you need to follow in a succinct form. So how does that influence your poetry where you can't really do that?
I think the thing which is helpful that I've taken from journalism that feeds into writing poetry is more in the editing than the writing. Being able to look at something you've written and take a step back from it and try and get in the headset of someone approaching it for the first time. And then looking out for, a large part of editing for newspapers is just everything always comes in too long and you have to shave bits off things.
Yeah.
And be able to look at it in a kind of cold way and think, well, do I really need this line or this phrase or even this stanza? If I were to, cover it in my hand and take that out of the poem, would the poem lose anything? And if it would, what would the poem be losing? That ability to kind of boil things down so there's not a wasted word or line, I think is something I've maybe got better at from having done that to, thousands of articles as a journalist.
Yeah. It's like cutting, what's the phrase in, like, when you're writing a play, like, cut out your lovelies? Have you heard that phrase?
Kill your darlings.
Kill your darlings. Cut me lovelies.
Cut me lovelies.
Cut me lovelies sounds something much worse.
Cut your lovelies. Kill your darlings. Yeah, that's. And obviously, that would definitely. But you also, as well, I suppose, with journalism, like you have to. You're always.
Reviewing. You're
reviewing, and you have to be obviously aware of the world as it is. So would that have played also an issue? Like you'd have to be observant as a journalist. Would that play into you writing poetry, but in a different form, or?
I don't know. I'd like to think so, but I worry that I'm not a very observant person. My partner's always telling me that I just don't notice really obvious things around me. I'm the kind of guy who really easily walks into traffic. I think. But I guess the idea of gathering facts and just being fascinated by new things and learning, like when you're writing news or features, you kind of have to become an expert in a new thing twice a day very quickly.
Yeah.
And just amassing a store of like bizarre, unrelated trivia is something I very much enjoyed doing. I put some little facts into the book as just kind of tidbits of obscure and interesting things because I love trivia and I think it can be used really well in really interesting ways in poetry. It's something that Paul Muldoon, who's one of my favourite poets, does a lot of. I guess
like him too.
Maybe that's what that sense of being connected to the world and keeping abreast of what's happening, but also just broadening your sphere of interests and knowledge as widely as possible might have been what Louis MacNeice was on about when he said a poet must be a reader of newspapers, which is a phrase I've always liked. I'd like to think that's true.
That's very interesting. Yeah, but you have to be aware of the world around you, I suppose, for you to get material and be plugged in as well. There's a lot of poets nowadays that are kind of social commentators or a sign of the time. Well, I suppose they've always been that way, where they're a reflection of the times themselves. So you'd have to obviously be aware of the times when you're writing about them. Like it kind of makes sense,
But you have to read, mate. Like we're quite prevalent, Tristram, on the kind of poetry open mic scene here in Dublin, which is like it's thriving. Like I don't know where do you live now? Sorry, Tristram. I know you left South East London.
I lived in South East London until last autumn, and I've just moved to Cambridge. So I'm in Cambridge.
You're doing your residence. Obviously, yeah. So I'd say there is a scene. I'd say in Cambridge of spoken word and open mics and poetry. And there's I don't know if it's as punk as it is in Dublin. It's a punk movement really here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the spoken word, but you can tell when someone is performing something without the help of being that keen a reader. That sounds a bit of a...
Yeah.
I just think you have to read. Like,
I mean-
it's like Simon Armitage said, like, there's 3 tips of writing poetry. Read and read and read more. Like, you got to fucking read.
Yeah.
Can't not read.
Yeah, completely. I mean, in the same way as if you meet a musician who tells you they don't listen to music, that would be a hell of a red flag. I feel the same thing should be true of poetry. In fact, if you don't mind, I guess this is a kind of a plug, but it feels relevant.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of launching a magazine. You know, I describe myself as a recovering journalist.
Yeah.
This is my now little part-time hobby when I'm skiving off from the serious work of writing poems. I'm editing this little magazine called The Little Review. The first issue's out at the end of May. But I really wanted to get work from people who were above all like keen readers and interesting readers who love poetry and spending time with it and thinking about it. And other people I'd met who'd edited poetry magazines or magazines that publish poetry always said they had the same problem, that they were just drowning in submissions. And a lot of those submissions were from people you could tell, never actually read anything.
Yeah.
So, and some of them tried to reduce the number of submissions by charging people, making them pay to send in the poems, which personally I'm really not a fan
Listen,
of.
I've spunked a lot of money submitting poems myself. So
I don't think it's something that anyone should ever have to do.
Yeah.
So for this magazine, I told people they could send in as many poems as they like, as long as each poem is accompanied by at least one book review.
Oh wow.
Yeah, good call that.
I like that.
And that way,
I like
they've all read at least one book, which is more than you can say for some people. And you get a sense of them as readers and what their tastes are and what perspective they're bringing to it. And I found sometimes reading someone's writing about poetry, you can then go back and look at their poem and you'll appreciate where it's coming from a bit more.
Yeah, and I think it's not being like snobby to say like you can't write without reading, but it just, you can see quite a linear way of viewing the world from people that write poetry and don't particularly read. It's like, especially with spoken word, if you don't read and do a spoken word piece, it's only about you and what you see and what has happened to you. Usually it's that, isn't it? It's like, here's a spoken word piece about what's happened to me.
Very
Listen up.
subjective,
And you're like, fuck, all right, yeah, but come on.
Yeah.
Any chance? Any nuance? Come on.
But like as you said, Tristram, as well, why would you not listen to music if you're a musician? And like, it gives you such great inspiration from looking at different genres, looking what different artists are doing and going, that's interesting, I'm going to play with that. And it's like reading poetry, watching poetry, hearing it. It's like, oh, that's very interesting what they've done. So you wonder how many people now are going to, create a lot of fake A-lists and stick them into their poetry collections. You never know, you might have started a movement there.
Tristan, would it be okay for you to read out the title poem of the book for us?
Yeah, sure. Hang on.
It's another piece
Actually,
where...
There we go, I've got it.
Yeah,
it's on page 31.
Good man.
Listeners, turn to page 31 for your copies now.
And it's like...
Okay.
It's another having a friend piece. Standing on the precipice, maybe.
Yeah, again, it's like so many of the ones, it's the last one in the first section, and it comes right after Lullaby, actually. It's another one about kind of, I guess, sort of emotional difficulty in trying to connect and achieve a kind of intimacy despite a distance. Oh god, I hate it when poets do like a long rambly introduction telling you about like the themes or the feelings of the poem. No more of that, I'm just going to read the poem. Okay. Before we go any further, let's tether our hot, sore hearts to the post. Tie up our lungs. Leave our breath to catch itself. Lighter and calmer, we'll walk up to the crest of this hill and stop. Place your hands to my empty chest. Knock twice for luck, as I raise mine up under your hair, stroke the nape of the neck that crooks to one side as you listen until we hear nothing beat slower. Then and only then will we turn back, hand in hand, to unhook the soft bronchi that buck still hoarse from shouting, scoop our hearts cool from the trough, pick up right where we left off.
Oh, well done.
Very
Great
good.
job, Tristram. Great job, mate.
Amazing. Very,
Thank
very
you.
good. Yeah. Before we go any further, amazing. That's a very So that's the title poem. That is the collection there.
There you
First
go.
debut collection. That's fantastic. Honestly, really, really good. The do you want anything to plug just before we wrap things up there, Tristram, if you'd like?
I guess the main thing wouldn't be my own work, but about your listeners' work. The magazine I mentioned, The Little Review, the website is thelittlereview.co.uk. It opens for submissions for the second issue on June 1st, and I'm really keen to just get more good stuff. So if anyone listening writes poetry or reviews or essays or features about poetry, I hope they'll consider sending some work in. As I mentioned, it's free to submit, and it always will be. Mate,
honestly, like we're on the front line of like getting people to send in poems, and there's never a shortage of people who want to be heard, and there's always surprises. So I am absolutely positive that after this conversation you will hear from people. You'll definitely get submissions. So Tristram, man, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, mate. I really appreciate you jumping on and having a conversation with us, and it's been I've really enjoyed our conversation, mate.
Oh, thank you so much. I have to.
No problem at all, and best luck with the residency, the poet in residence of
great,
Cambridge.
Man. By the way, that's incredible. Like, well done, man.
Did they give you a crown?
The crown is probably still in the post. It hasn't turned up yet.
For fuck's sake.
Well, when it does, send us a picture of it when it arrives, hopefully, so we can put it on.
I think what they're meant to do is put a crown on me and then put me on the top of some high pole while everyone gets drunk, like with the goats. I think it's inspired by the goat system. Yeah,
I love it. You'd be down in Killorglin now with your Cambridge crown on and the King Book. Brilliant.
Thank you so much, Tristram.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you, brother. Wow, we talked about everything.
Everything around the world.
In
30 minutes. You're jet setters.
Great fella. Really enjoyed talking to him.
Yeah.
Delighted that he's got the residency there as well as in Cambridge.
It's some achievement, isn't it?
Yeah. I really enjoy reading the book, and I think it's a pleasure to read it. So grab a copy. The wording's there of them in stock still, so get your hands on it.
Exactly, and you can probably get more online as well, I'd say.
We'll wrap the show up with the voice of Roo Elizabeth. Roo found our podcast a couple of months ago, is an artist out in Galway. Dropped a message back and forth. She's a listener, and when she's released a song called Bad Dream. She'll be releasing some tour dates this year as well. Nothing yet to be announced, but she does have new music coming out this summer. We're going to listen to Roo now. So this is Roo Elizabeth with Bad Dream. Leon, thanks for your time, pal.
Always a pleasure, Ryan, baby.
You don't look too hanging from the weekend. I think you look quite fresh.
Fresh and sweating.
Yeah, sweating. Yeah, let's get out of here.
I'm just tired and scared. I'm not going anywhere. I've got these notions all wrapped up in potions, and I cast all these spells. They're not working quite so well. I'm just tired and scared. I'm not